Shkreli, arguably the most hated man in America right now, has officially resigned as CEO of Turing Pharmaceuticals, where he jacked up the price of one treatment by about $5,000. This follows his arrest on securities fraud charges unrelated to the pill's pricing. With me now, former federal prosecutor Doug Burns. Doug, it is great to see you.
Thank you.
So, Martin Shkreli basically drew a lot of attention to himself, and now he is facing 7 charges of securities and wire fraud. Are those two things related?
Well,
attention to himself and the charges.
Of course it is. It's so interesting because the first thing everybody's asking is, does this have to do with him raising the price of the drug? The answer is no. It has nothing to do with that. But the cardinal rule in the white-collar world, let's face it, do not draw attention to yourself. Why? Because if regulators start looking at you, as people wiser than I have said, on many levels, no man can bear scrutiny. So if they're looking at one thing, well, guess what? They start looking at something else.
So whether
That's what
or
happens.
not it is supposed to be the way that our system works or not, that is to say that judges, right, or prosecutors meant to be impartial, not politically motivated. But you're saying if you're a businessman, a businesswoman, and you call a lot of attention to yourself and not the best ways, just expect hassle.
In the corridors of our offices, we call it radar screen. Do not get on a government radar screen if you can avoid it. No, seriously. And so the point is, I'm not necessarily prepared to say, you know, I was politically motivated, but at the same time, he takes a drug, tries to jack it up 5,000%, whatever it was. Now all of a sudden people are looking at him. I don't know exactly how the investigation started, but the allegations in the indictment are pretty serious. In other words, he had a failed hedge fund investment pretty badly.
2.
Yeah, $7 million. I mean, a lot of money. So what does he do? He turns around and he sets up sham or fake consulting agreements, right, claiming that the failed investors in the hedge fund worked for the pharmaceutical company.
Well, the prosecutor called it a Ponzi scheme, which brings me, and you and I spoke back in the day quite a lot about Madoff. So
of course.
Madoff was sentenced to 130 years in prison, so we assume he will die there unless he is a modern miracle.
It'd have to be 220 roughly. Right?
But Shkreli, it seems like the maximum sentence for these 7 counts of wire fraud and securities fraud at 20 years is the maximum sentence if he...
Well, the securities fraud counts are 0 to 20 years. You're exactly right. The mail and wire frauds are 0 to 5 years. However, what they do is they calculate a guideline sentence, you know, sentencing guidelines, based on the amount of money. This is a $10+ million situation, so he's facing concrete time approaching 10+ years if he's convicted at a trial.
And we know his parents, like, were janitors in Brooklyn, came here, one from Albania, one from Croatia, wanted the best for their kid, and this is what
Well, it's the American dream sort of gone awry. In other words, he was very smart, very talented apparently, but again, I think what caused the downfall was the failed hedge fund investment, because then you start getting desperate, and he started making misrepresentations about it, saying, oh no, the fund's doing fine. No, it wasn't.
The cover-up is worse than the
Always
crime.
worse than the crime.
Doug Burns, great to see you. Thank you so much. Former federal prosecutor with me there, Doug Burns.